Captain Marcus Chen never imagined his military career would lead him to an altar on an alien world, staring into the six eyes of a creature that could crush his skull with one hand. Yet here he stood in the grand ceremonial chamber of Vorthak Prime, wearing traditional Vorthaki robes that felt like wearing a circus tent, about to marry Princess Zarathul of the Crimson Hive. The war between humanity and the Vorthaki Empire had raged for 7 brutal years. Entire star systems burned, while fleets clashed in the void between worlds. Billions had died on both sides, and the conflict showed no signs of ending. The Vorthaki were natural warriors, standing nearly 9 feet tall with 4 arms and exoskeletons that could deflect most human weapons. Their technology surpassed humanity's in every way except one: adaptability. Humans were unpredictable. Where the Vorthaki followed rigid military doctrine passed down through millennia, humans constantly improvised, creating new tactics that caught their enemies off guard. This single advantage had allowed the smaller human fleet to survive far longer than anyone expected. The marriage proposal came through diplomatic channels 3 weeks ago. Emperor Krathval himself had suggested it, a symbolic union between species to end hostilities. Princess Zarathul would marry a human representative, demonstrating that peaceful coexistence was possible. The marriage would be ceremonial only, lasting just long enough for both governments to sign a formal peace treaty. Then Marcus would return to Earth, and the princess would resume her royal duties. Marcus volunteered immediately. His parents had died in the bombing of New Geneva, and his younger sister Sarah was serving on the front lines near the Centauri system. If a fake marriage could bring her home safely, he would gladly endure a few weeks of diplomatic theater. Standing before the ornate altar carved from crystallized Vorthaki bone, Marcus tried to focus on the ceremonial words being spoken by the high priest. The alien's voice resonated through translation devices built into the chamber walls, but the actual meaning felt surreal. He was promising to honor, protect, and cherish a being he had met only hours earlier. Princess Zarathul stood across from him, magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Her exoskeleton gleamed deep red with gold markings that indicated her royal bloodline. Unlike other Vorthaki Marcus had encountered in battle, she moved with fluid grace rather than predatory aggression. Her 6 eyes were arranged in 2 rows across her elongated skull, and he found himself wondering what the world looked like through such a different visual system. When the priest asked Marcus to place the ceremonial bond ring around the princess's primary arm, he stepped forward carefully. The ring was made from some kind of living metal that adjusted itself to fit perfectly around her massive limb. The moment it clicked into place, something unexpected happened. A warm sensation flowed up Marcus's arm from where he touched the ring. Not painful, but definitely alien. The princess's eyes all focused on him simultaneously, and for just an instant he could have sworn he felt something brush against his thoughts. Not words exactly, but emotions. Surprise, curiosity, and something else he couldn't identify. "It is done," announced the priest. "The bond is sealed between species." The ceremony concluded with traditional Vorthaki war chants that made the chamber walls vibrate. Marcus found himself swept along to the reception, where he was introduced to hundreds of alien nobility whose names he had no hope of remembering. They all seemed fascinated by him, examining his small frame and soft skin with obvious curiosity. Throughout the evening, Princess Zarathul remained at his side, translating conversations and ensuring he understood the cultural significance of various rituals. She spoke perfect English with only the slightest accent, her voice surprisingly melodious despite the intimidating mandibles that framed her mouth. "You seem nervous, husband," she said during a brief moment when they were alone on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The term husband sounded strange coming from her, even though it was technically accurate now. "Wouldn't you be?" Marcus replied, gesturing at the alien landscape spread below them. This morning I was a starship captain. Now I'm married to royalty on a world I've only seen in intelligence briefings. True, she acknowledged, though I suspect you have seen more of my world through your targeting systems than most humans ever will. There was no accusation in her tone, just a statement of fact that reminded Marcus exactly why they were both here. This marriage was about ending a war, not building a relationship. I've lost friends to your fleets, he said quietly, and I'm sure you've lost people to mine. This isn't exactly a fairy tale romance. Princess Zarathul tilted her head in what he was learning to recognize as the Vorthaki equivalent of a nod. No, it is not. But perhaps it is something more important. They spent the next hour discussing the peace negotiations. The princess was remarkably well informed about military strategy and seemed to understand the war's progression better than many human admirals Marcus had served under. She asked thoughtful questions about human tactics and appeared genuinely interested in his perspectives on various battles. Your species fights with such chaos, she observed. No grand strategy, no unified command structure. By all logical analysis, you should have been defeated within the first year. Maybe logic isn't everything, Marcus suggested. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts and adapt to whatever situation you're facing. An interesting philosophy, the princess mused. My people have followed the same military doctrines for 12,000 years. They have served us well in conquering most of this galaxy. Until you met us. Until we met you, she agreed. Your unpredictability is both maddening and admirable. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of General Tokmar, the Emperor's chief military advisor. The massive Vorthaki warrior approached with obvious displeasure at finding the princess speaking privately with her human husband. Your Highness, he said in heavily accented English, clearly for Marcus's benefit, the Emperor wishes to discuss tomorrow's ceremony with you. Of course, she replied smoothly. Marcus, you should rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. As she moved to leave with the general, Marcus found himself saying, Zarathul. She paused and looked back at him. Thank you, he said, for making this easier than it had to be. Something shifted in her expression, a softening around her eyes that he hadn't seen before. Sleep well, husband. Marcus was escorted to his quarters in the royal wing of the palace. The room was enormous by human standards, with furniture adapted for both species. A massive bed dominated one wall, while smaller human-sized furniture occupied another area. Someone had even provided him with human food and entertainment systems. As he prepared for sleep, Marcus reflected on the strangeness of his situation. Tomorrow there would be another ceremony, the formal ratification of the peace treaty. Representatives from both governments would sign the documents, officially ending hostilities. Then he would board a transport back to human space, and this entire experience would become just another chapter in the history books. He found himself thinking about Princess Zarathul's comment about admiring human adaptability. Throughout their conversation, he had noticed her studying him with an intensity that went beyond diplomatic curiosity. She seemed genuinely interested in understanding how humans thought and operated. The bond ring on her arm had felt warm when he touched it during the ceremony. Marcus had heard rumors about Vorthaki bonding rituals, but the intelligence briefings had been vague about the actual mechanics, something about psychic connections and emotional sharing, but nothing concrete enough to prepare him for what had happened. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of vast alien cities and six-eyed faces watching him from the darkness. Marcus woke to find a Vorthaki servant delivering his breakfast. The alien being was much smaller than the warriors and nobility he had encountered, with a brown exoskeleton instead of the red and gold coloring that marked the royal caste. "Good morning, Lord Marcus," the servant said in broken English. "Princess asks that you join her in garden after eating." The palace gardens were spectacular, featuring plants from dozens of worlds in the Vorthaki Empire. Princess Zarathul stood beside a fountain that sparkled with bioluminescent algae, still wearing the ceremonial robes from the previous night. She looked like she had not slept. "Is everything all right?" Marcus asked as he approached. "I need to speak with you before the ratification ceremony," she said without preamble. "About the bond ring." Marcus looked down at his own arm, where a matching ring had appeared sometime during the night. He had not noticed it until this moment, but now he could feel its weight and warmth against his skin. "I didn't put this on," he said, confused. "No," she confirmed. "The bonding process began during our ceremony yesterday. It will complete itself over time unless actively severed." "What does that mean exactly?" Princess Zarathul was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Vorthaki bonding is not merely ceremonial. When two individuals are joined in this way, they develop a psychic connection. Emotions, thoughts, even memories can be shared." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "And you didn't think to mention this before the ceremony?" "I assumed it would not work between our species," she said defensively. "Vorthaki have only successfully bonded with others of our kind. The fact that you can wear the ring at all is unprecedented. So what happens now?" "That depends on you," she said. "The bond can be severed cleanly within the first 7 days. After that, breaking it becomes complicated." Marcus studied her face, trying to read the emotions behind her alien features. "What aren't you telling me?" The princess turned to gaze into the fountain. "My people believe that true bonding occurs only between souls that are compatible across multiple lifetimes. It is not something that can be forced or faked." "But our marriage is fake," Marcus pointed out. "It's a political arrangement." "Yes," she said quietly. "That is what troubles me." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. If the bonding process was working between them, it suggested something neither of them had anticipated. The marriage might have been arranged for political reasons, but the connection forming between them was entirely real. "How long do I have to decide?" he asked. "The treaty ceremony begins in 4 hours," Princess Zarathul replied. "By tradition, bonded pairs cannot be separated once the political union is formalized. If you are still wearing the ring when we sign those documents, you will be bound to remain here as my consort." Marcus looked out over the alien garden, his mind racing. Everything he had planned for his future, returning to Earth, resuming his military career, finding Sarah, suddenly hung in the balance. Yet he could not ignore the growing connection he felt to this remarkable woman who could have been his enemy just days before. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. Princess Zarathul met his gaze with all 6 eyes. "I want you to choose freely, without pressure from duty or politics. Whatever you decide, I will honor." As Marcus stood in that alien garden, feeling the weight of the bond ring on his arm and the intensity of the princess's attention, he realized that this decision would determine not just his own future, but possibly the fate of 2 entire species. The treaty ceremony proceeded with all the pomp and grandeur the Vorthaki Empire could muster. Representatives from both governments sat around a massive crystalline table, while Marcus stood beside Princess Zarathul at the center of the chamber. The bond ring remained on his arm, warm and somehow alive against his skin. Admiral Hayes, the human delegation's leader, kept shooting questioning glances at Marcus throughout the proceedings. They had served together for 3 years, and Hayes knew Marcus well enough to recognize internal conflict when he saw it. The plan had been simple: sign the treaty, collect their ceremonial husband, and return to human space with peace secured. Emperor Krathval himself presided over the ceremony, his massive form draped in robes that seemed to absorb light. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had ruled an interstellar empire for over 2 centuries. Today marks the end of hostilities between our peoples, he announced. Let this union between my daughter and the human representative serve as proof that our species can coexist in harmony. The formal documents were presented, thick scrolls of biometal that would record the agreement permanently in both alien script and human languages. As each representative signed their portion, Marcus felt the weight of history settling around them. Princess Zarathul signed with practiced efficiency, her 4 arms moving in perfect coordination. When it came time for Marcus to add his signature, he hesitated just long enough for Admiral Hayes to notice. The bond ring pulsed gently against his skin, and for just an instant, he felt something that was not his own emotion: anxiety, hope, and deep uncertainty that mirrored his own feelings perfectly. The princess was experiencing the same conflict he was, torn between duty and something much more personal. Marcus signed the treaty. The moment his stylus lifted from the biometal surface, he felt the bond ring grow warmer. Around the chamber, Vorthaki nobles began a low harmonic chant that seemed to resonate through the floor and walls. According to tradition, he was now permanently bound to remain on Vorthak Prime as Princess Zarathul's consort. Admiral Hayes approached as the ceremony concluded. Captain Chen, your transport leaves in 2 hours. I trust you're ready to return home? Marcus looked at the Admiral, then at Princess Zarathul, who stood watching them with careful attention. Actually, sir, there's been a complication. The Admiral's expression darkened. What kind of complication? The marriage bond appears to be more permanent than we anticipated, Marcus explained. Breaking it now could be interpreted as an insult to Vorthaki culture and potentially void the peace treaty. It was not entirely true, but it was not entirely false either. The princess had made it clear that the bond could still be severed, but Marcus had made his choice. The connection he felt growing between them was unlike anything he had ever experienced, and he was not ready to walk away from it. Captain, I need to speak with you privately, Admiral Hayes said through gritted teeth. They stepped onto a balcony overlooking the palace courtyard. Below them, Vorthaki citizens were celebrating the end of the war with bioluminescent displays that painted the sky in shifting patterns of color. Marcus, what the hell are you doing? Hayes demanded. Your duty is to return with us and resume your career. You can't seriously be considering staying here permanently. The bond is real, sir, Marcus said quietly. I can feel her emotions, her thoughts. This isn't just political theater anymore. You've known her for 2 days. Time doesn't seem to matter with this kind of connection, Marcus replied. I understand how it sounds, but I need you to trust me on this. Admiral Hayes studied his former captain's face for a long moment. The Admiralty isn't going to accept this. They'll demand you return for debriefing. Then tell them the Vorthaki cultural requirements make it impossible, Marcus suggested. You've got your peace treaty. Isn't that worth 1 career officer? Damn it, Marcus, Hayes muttered. You always were too clever for your own good. The Admiral left with the rest of the human delegation, taking with him Marcus's official resignation from the Earth Defense Force. Princess Zarathul stood beside Marcus as they watched the human transport disappear into the afternoon sky, carrying away his old life. Do you regret your decision? She asked. Marcus considered the question seriously. Ask me again in a few months. Right now, I'm still processing the fact that I just abandoned everything I've ever known for a woman I met yesterday. Yet you stayed. I stayed, he confirmed. Though I should probably mention that I have no idea how to be an alien princess's consort. Princess Zarathul's mandibles clicked in what he was learning to recognize as amusement. Then it is fortunate that I have no idea how to be bonded to a human. We shall learn together. The next several weeks passed in a blur of cultural education and diplomatic meetings. Marcus was assigned tutors to teach him Vorthaki history, language, and social customs. The complexity of alien civilization was staggering. Their society had been spacefaring for over 15,000 years, conquering and incorporating hundreds of different species into their empire. Princess Zarathul proved to be an patient teacher, helping him navigate the intricate web of noble relationships and political obligations that governed palace life. She was also, he discovered, remarkably intelligent and well-educated. Her formal training included military strategy, xenobiology, advanced mathematics, and diplomatic protocol. "Your people assume we are simple warriors," she said one evening as they shared dinner in her private chambers. "But conquest requires more than brute force. We have spent millennia studying the species we encounter, learning how to integrate them into our empire without destroying what makes them valuable." "Is that what you're doing with me?" Marcus asked. "Studying humanity?" "I was," she admitted. "But the bond has made that complicated." The bond between them had indeed grown stronger over time. Marcus found himself aware of her presence even when they were separated by the vast palace. He could sense her emotional state and sometimes even catch glimpses of her thoughts. More surprisingly, she seemed equally affected by their connection. One night, Marcus woke from a nightmare about the bombing of New Geneva to find Princess Zarathul sitting beside his bed. Her 6 eyes reflected moonlight filtering through the chamber's tall windows. "Your pain woke me," she said softly. "I felt your memories of that day." Marcus sat up slowly, still shaking from the vivid dream. "I'm sorry. I didn't know the bond could do that." "Nor did I," she replied. "But I have experienced enough of your memories now to understand why you volunteered for this mission. You lost much in this war." They talked until dawn about their respective losses. Princess Zarathul had lost 2 younger brothers in battles with human forces, while Marcus shared stories about his parents and his fears for his sister Sarah's safety. The shared grief created a deeper understanding between them than any amount of cultural education could provide. 3 months into his stay on Vorthak Prime, Marcus received an encrypted message from Earth. Sarah had been promoted to commander and assigned to lead a new joint human Vorthaki patrol unit. The peace treaty was holding, and several collaborative projects were already being planned. "She sounds proud of her brother," Princess Zarathul observed, reading over his shoulder. "She probably thinks I've lost my mind," Marcus replied. "Staying here, bonding with an alien princess. It's not exactly a conventional career move." "Do you miss your old life?" Marcus considered the question carefully. His duties as consort were challenging but engaging. He was learning to serve as a cultural liaison, helping other human visitors understand Vorthaki society while providing the princess with insights into human psychology and behavior. It was important work that utilized his military experience in unexpected ways. More importantly, his relationship with Princess Zarathul continued to deepen. The bond between them had evolved beyond simple emotional sharing into something approaching telepathic communication. They could coordinate complex activities with minimal verbal interaction, and Marcus found himself understanding alien concepts that should have been completely foreign to human thinking. "No," he said finally. "I don't miss it. This is challenging in ways I never expected, but it feels right." The princess moved closer to him on the observation deck, where they were watching Vorthak Prime's 3 moons rise over the capital city. "The bond has affected me as well," she said. "I find myself thinking in human concepts, seeing situations from your perspective. My advisors have noticed the change." "Is that a problem?" "Some believe it makes me unfit to rule," she admitted. "They argue that bonding with a human has compromised my loyalty to the Empire." Marcus felt a surge of protective anger that was echoed immediately through their bond. "What do you think?" I think they underestimate how much stronger this makes me, she replied. Understanding your species gives me advantages they cannot appreciate. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of General Thokmar, who approached with obvious urgency. Your Highness, the Emperor has summoned you to an emergency session of the War Council. Princess Zarathul rose immediately, her demeanor shifting into the formal bearing Marcus had learned to recognize as her political mode. What is the nature of the emergency? Reports from the outer sectors, the general replied, glancing at Marcus with obvious disapproval. The Void Hunters have begun moving against our border colonies. Marcus felt the princess's emotional state shift to alarm through their bond. The Void Hunters were a nomadic species of energy beings that consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing behind but empty space. They had been dormant for over a century, but intelligence reports suggested they were awakening from their hibernation cycle. How many systems have been affected? She asked. 3 confirmed, with signs of movement toward the Kepler sector, General Thokmar replied. The Emperor is considering mobilizing the entire battle fleet. Princess Zarathul looked at Marcus, and he could feel her internal conflict through their bond. This was exactly the kind of crisis that would test whether her connection to humanity was an asset or a liability. Summon my advisors, she commanded, and prepare a full briefing on Void Hunter capabilities. If we are going to face this threat, we need to understand everything about our enemy. As they hurried toward the War Council chambers, Marcus realized that his new life was about to become much more complicated. The peace between humans and Vorthaki was still fragile, and now both species faced a threat that could destroy everything they had worked to build. The Void Hunters had returned, and Princess Zarathul would need every advantage she could muster to protect her people, including the unpredictable human perspective that her bond with Marcus provided. The War Council chamber buzzed with activity as military officials and advisors assembled around a massive holographic display showing the affected sectors. Emperor Krathaval dominated the head of the table, his expression grim as reports continued to arrive from the outer colonies. Honored Father, Princess Zarathul said, as she took her place at the council table, with Marcus standing slightly behind her. What is our current assessment of the threat? Grave, the Emperor replied. The Void Hunters appear to be following their historical pattern of systematic consumption, but they are moving faster than previous cycles indicated. At their current rate of advance, they will reach our core systems within 18 months. General Thokmar activated a section of the holographic display, showing the progression of empty space where thriving star systems had existed just weeks earlier. Our conventional weapons are ineffective against energy-based life forms. Previous encounters with the Void Hunters resulted in strategic withdrawals until they returned to hibernation. How long did those hibernation cycles last? Marcus asked, speaking for the first time since entering the chamber. Several council members turned to stare at him with obvious surprise that a human would dare speak during a Vorthaki military briefing. Emperor Krathaval's 6 eyes fixed on Marcus with calculating intensity. The human raises a valid question, the Emperor said finally. Historical records indicate hibernation periods of between 500 and 2,000 years. Then waiting for them to go back to sleep isn't really an option, Marcus observed. Not unless you're willing to evacuate half the empire for the next millennium. Princess Zarathul felt his mind working through the tactical implications and found herself following his logic. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that maybe it's time to try something unpredictable, Marcus replied, looking directly at the Emperor. Your Majesty, has anyone ever tried to communicate with the Void Hunters? The War Council chamber fell silent at Marcus's suggestion. Emperor Krathaval's expression was unreadable as he considered the human's words, while General Thokmar looked openly scandalized that an outsider would propose strategy during a military crisis. "Communication with the Void Hunters has never been attempted," the Emperor said slowly. "Our ancestors believed them to be mindless devourers acting on pure instinct." "But you've never actually tested that theory," Marcus pressed. "Maybe they're not mindless. Maybe they're just operating according to logic we don't understand yet." Princess Zarathul could feel his excitement through their bond as the idea developed in his mind. Through their connection, she began to see the possibility he was envisioning, a solution that relied on understanding rather than force. "What do you propose?" she asked, knowing that the council would listen to her where they might dismiss him. "We need to gather more intelligence," Marcus said. "Study their movement patterns, analyze their behavior, look for signs of organized intelligence rather than just assuming they're space locusts." General Thokmar slammed one of his 4 fists on the table. "Your Majesty, this human's inexperience shows clearly. The Void Hunters are a force of nature, like a stellar collapse or gamma-ray burst. You cannot negotiate with entropy." "And yet," Emperor Krathval mused, "our traditional approaches have proven insufficient. Perhaps a fresh perspective has value." The debate continued for hours, with military advisors arguing for massive fleet deployments while civilian officials worried about the economic cost of evacuation protocols. Through it all, Marcus found himself studying the tactical displays, looking for patterns that others might have missed. The Void Hunters moved in coordinated groups, never attacking systems simultaneously, but following what appeared to be carefully planned sequences. Their approach vectors suggested they were avoiding certain types of stellar formations while prioritizing others. Most telling of all, they had completely bypassed 3 inhabited systems that should have been easy targets, continuing toward more distant objectives. "They're being selective," Marcus said suddenly, interrupting a heated discussion about defensive positioning. "Explain," commanded the Emperor. Marcus gestured to the holographic display. "Look at their route. They passed by the Helix system completely, even though it has a massive population and should represent a significant energy source. Same with the Androban colonies, but they specifically targeted the research stations in empty space near the galactic rim." Princess Zarathul followed his reasoning through their bond, her own tactical training combining with his fresh perspective. "The research stations were studying exotic matter interactions," she said, "and the systems they did attack all had unusual stellar phenomena: pulsars, binary formations, quantum cascade generators." "They're not just feeding," Marcus concluded. "They're collecting something specific." Emperor Krathval leaned forward, his attention now fully focused on the human's analysis. "If your theory is correct, what would you have us do?" "Send a delegation," Marcus said without hesitation. "Not a battle fleet, not an ultimatum. A small, fast ship with communication equipment and scientists who understand exotic physics. Try to establish contact and find out what they actually want." The suggestion caused an uproar among the military advisors. General Thokmar looked apoplectic at the idea of approaching the Void Hunters with anything other than maximum firepower. "It is suicide," the general declared. "Any ship that approaches them will be consumed immediately." "Maybe," Marcus acknowledged. "But if we're right about them being intelligent, then they might be willing to talk before they attack. And if we're wrong, we lose one ship instead of an entire fleet." Princess Zarathul stood, commanding immediate attention from the entire council. "I volunteer to lead the delegation." The chamber erupted in protests. Emperor Krathval raised one massive hand for silence, his expression grave as he considered his daughter's words. "Absolutely not," he said finally. "I will not risk the heir to the throne on such a desperate gambit." "With respect, Father, who else could represent our empire with sufficient authority to negotiate?" she countered. And who else has access to human strategic thinking that might prove crucial in understanding these beings? She gestured to Marcus, making it clear that their bond would be essential to any diplomatic mission. Through their connection, Marcus felt her determination and realized she had been planning this from the moment he suggested communication. "The princess speaks wisdom," said Advisor Veltar, the Empire's chief xenobiologist. "If the Void Hunters are indeed intelligent, they will recognize the significance of royal involvement. It demonstrates serious intent rather than mere curiosity." Emperor Krathval was quiet for a long moment, his 6 eyes moving between his daughter and the tactical displays. Finally, he spoke. "If you are determined to pursue this course, you will not go alone. Take a full diplomatic escort and the fastest ship in the fleet, and—" He paused, looking directly at Marcus. "You will take your human consort. His insights may prove valuable." General Thokmar looked ready to object again, but the Emperor's tone brooked no argument. The decision was made. Preparation for the mission took 3 intensive weeks. Princess Zarathul assembled a team of xenobiologists, physicists, communication specialists, and diplomatic personnel. Marcus found himself appointed as strategic advisor, a role that would have been impossible before his bonding with the princess. The ship selected for their mission was the Harmony of Spheres, a cutting-edge exploration vessel equipped with every communication system known to Vorthaki science. It could maintain real-time contact across interstellar distances and carried enough exotic matter reserves to power extended research operations. As they prepared to depart, Princess Zarathul took Marcus aside for a private conversation in her quarters. "Are you certain about this?" she asked. "If we are wrong about the Void Hunter's intelligence, this mission will likely be our last." Marcus considered her question seriously. Through their bond, he could feel her own uncertainty mixed with fierce determination. Over the months they had been together, he had come to understand that she was driven by a deep sense of responsibility for her people's welfare. "I'm certain we have to try," he said finally. "Traditional military solutions haven't worked for 15,000 years. Maybe it's time to try something different." "And if we succeed, what happens to us afterward?" It was a question Marcus had been avoiding. Success would likely mean preventing a war that could devastate both the Vorthaki Empire and human space. But it would also cement his position as permanent consort to an alien princess, making any return to human society impossible. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I can't imagine being anywhere else anymore." The princess moved closer, her 4 arms gently encircling him. Through their bond, he felt her love and gratitude, emotions so powerful they took his breath away. "Nor can I," she whispered. The Harmony of Spheres launched at dawn, carrying them toward the edge of known space where the Void Hunters were last detected. The journey would take 2 weeks at maximum velocity, giving the team time to refine their approach and prepare for what might be the first diplomatic contact with a species older than recorded history. Marcus spent the voyage working with the communications team to develop translation protocols that could handle energy-based language patterns. The challenge was unlike anything in his military experience, requiring him to think about consciousness and communication in entirely new ways. Princess Zarathul coordinated with the science team to analyze every scrap of data about Void Hunter behavior, looking for patterns that might indicate communication attempts or negotiation signals. Her royal training in diplomacy proved invaluable in preparing for contact with a completely alien intelligence. On the 10th day of their journey, they received word that another system had been consumed. But this time, the Void Hunters had left something behind, a complex energy pattern that pulsed with mathematical precision. "They're trying to communicate," Dr. Veltar announced excitedly. "This pattern is clearly artificial, not a natural phenomenon." Marcus studied the energy signature, feeling a familiar tingle of recognition through his bond with the princess. Can we replicate it? Theoretically, yes, replied Chief Engineer Korthul. Our exotic matter generators could produce a similar pattern. Then that's our opening, Princess Zarathul decided. We respond to their signal and see if they're willing to talk. They found the Void Hunters in the Kepler sector, a massive swarm of energy beings moving in perfect formation toward the next inhabited system. From a safe distance, the harmony of spheres transmitted a modified version of the mathematical pattern the creatures had left behind. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The entire swarm shifted direction, moving toward their ship with frightening speed. For a terrifying moment, Marcus thought they had made a fatal mistake. Then the Void Hunters stopped just outside weapons range and began transmitting. The signal was unlike anything in the ship's databases, pure energy organized into complex patterns that somehow conveyed meaning directly to the mind. The translation computers struggled to process the alien concepts, but gradually, a message emerged. Ancient bonds broken, star paths corrupted, hunger grows beyond purpose. Seek restoration of the first harmony. Princess Zarathul and Marcus exchanged glances as the meaning became clear. The Void Hunters were not mindless destroyers. They were gardeners of some kind, trying to repair damage to the cosmic infrastructure that supported their existence. Can you elaborate on the nature of this damage? Princess Zarathul transmitted back, using the ship's exotic matter generators to shape her words into energy patterns the creatures could understand. The response came in the form of complex mathematical equations describing space-time distortions and quantum cascade failures. Dr. Veltar worked frantically to translate the physics, his excitement growing as the picture became clear. They're talking about stellar engineering, he announced. Someone has been mining exotic matter from quantum cascade generators, disrupting natural energy flows that these beings depend on for survival. Marcus felt a chill as the implications hit him. The research stations they attacked, they were all studying exotic matter extraction. We have been removing your food source, Princess Zarathul transmitted to the Void Hunters. We did not understand the consequences. Understanding emerges. Possibility of renewal detected. Will younger species assist in restoration? The negotiation that followed lasted for 3 days. The Void Hunters explained their role as maintainers of cosmic energy flows, while Princess Zarathul learned about the delicate balance required to sustain their form of life. Centuries of exotic matter mining had disrupted critical energy pathways, forcing the Void Hunters to consume inhabited systems to survive. The solution, when it emerged, was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of mining exotic matter, the various species of the galaxy could work together to cultivate it. The Void Hunters would teach them how to establish stable energy flows that would provide the resources both organic and energy-based life forms needed. It will require cooperation between all major civilizations, Princess Zarathul explained to her father via subspace transmission. Humans, Vorthaki, the Centauri Alliance, even the Crystal Hierarchies, everyone will need to participate. Emperor Krathval's response was immediate. And you believe this arrangement will be honored? The Void Hunters have agreed to a trial period, she replied. One system, properly maintained, in exchange for avoiding 3 inhabited worlds. If it works, we expand the program. The return journey to Vorthak Prime took on the nature of a victory celebration. The science team was ecstatic about the technological advances they would gain, while the diplomatic personnel were already planning the massive interspecies conferences that would be required. Marcus found himself thinking about the broader implications of what they had accomplished. The marriage that had begun as political theater had evolved into something much more significant. His bond with Princess Zarathul had provided the unique perspective necessary to solve an ancient crisis. Do you regret staying? she asked as they watched the stars stream past the observation deck. Never, Marcus replied without hesitation. Although I should probably send Sarah a message explaining that her brother helped prevent another galactic war. She will be proud, the princess said, as am I. Through their bond, Marcus felt the depth of her love and admiration. What had started as a fake marriage had become the foundation for peace between species and the resolution of a threat that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. When they reached Vorthak Prime, they found Emperor Krathval waiting with representatives from a dozen different species. Word of their success had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to be part of the new alliance that would reshape how civilization approached cosmic resources. Marcus stood beside Princess Zarathul as she addressed the assembled delegates, feeling the warm weight of the bond ring that had changed everything. The marriage that was supposed to last a few weeks had become permanent, but not because of alien customs or political pressure. They had chosen each other, freely and completely, creating something unprecedented in galactic history. A human and a Vorthaki princess, bonded in ways that transcended species barriers, working together to build a future neither could have imagined. As Princess Zarathul began outlining the new energy cultivation protocols to the assembled representatives, Marcus realized that his real military career was just beginning. Instead of fighting wars, he would help prevent them. Instead of commanding a single ship, he would help coordinate the efforts of entire civilizations. The fake marriage had ended a war, just as planned. But the real marriage that grew from it was about to reshape the galaxy.